Hi, and welcome to Story Mapping, a video game example. This is an introduction to planning a project and forming milestones with sprint estimates and sprint goals. This presentation is made for project leads and for team members. This is for anyone who is planning on a large project and trying to break it down to its smaller components. This presentation should be agnostic to whether you have a feature list or if you're working with a blank slate. But this presentation will talk about planning a project that has a schedule and that has deadlines and milestones. A quick word about myself. I've been in video games since the year 2000 and a producer since 2007. I became a Scrum Master in 2008, and I am now a Senior Scrum Master and Agile Coach. And of course, I've been a cartoonist for just about forever. This presentation is all within the framework of the Agile philosophy, and again, those philosophies are: we invest in individuals and interactions over our processes and tools. Not to say we don't have processes and tools, it's just that we focus on our individuals and our interactions. Again, we prefer working software over comprehensive documentations, customer collaboration over contract negotiations, and responding to a change over following a plan. Not to say that we don't have a plan, but we want our plans to be flexible enough to respond to changes. So here's our example. We're going to be making classic board games extreme because X makes everything cooler. We're talking about making a collection of games packaged together. We'll have chess, we want to have checkers, we want to have backgammon, and we want to have Go. Our differentiator is going to be several things. We're going to have these cool-ass pieces, right? We're going to have all these great characters on the board at all times. We're going to set our game boards down in really cool locations. We're going to have massive cool effects. Whenever a piece gets taken off the board, you're going to know it. And of course, we're going to be multiplayer because these are board games and we want to be multiplayer. So we'll need a game lobby, leaderboards, spectator mode, those kinds of things. And lastly, we want to make money. We want to monetize. So we have to think of our monetization plan when we think of our final version of the game. So I'm going to talk about the storyboard session. We can call it a Durden session because it can be a grueling Fight Club kind of day. But these are the things we're going to need in this Durden session. We're going to need the pitch document. We're going to want to have the milestone schedule as maybe already laid out in the contract. We're going to want representation from all the disciplines involved. And for video game creation, that would mean having a senior artist, having a senior programmer, having a senior designer, and of course, production staff. I would highly advise as well having a senior QA person in the meeting because your test plan should be thought about from the very beginning of your game. And of course, you're going to need a fair amount of time and snacks because this meeting is going to go on for some time. This is all couched within, again, working software is more important to us than having a long, comprehensive document that may or may not have to change once we start building the game. The story mapping session, the story map, is about visualizing the final experience at a high level if I'm the end user or player. We would have everybody in the room kind of close their eyes. They don't have to necessarily close their eyes, but they are going to stop and think about what's this game going to feel like once it's finally done. So, as a player, I'm going to download the game off of Steam and install it onto my computer. I'm going to create an account for myself. I'm going to select the game that I want to play. Of course, that will launch me into the player lobby where I'm waiting to get my match set up with an opponent. Then I'll play the game. Once the game is over, there'll be some ending that'll show me my progress as an individual player and, of course, my place in the leaderboard. And then once the game is shut down, powered off, there's going to be some things that we know we're going to want in the powered off mode. What I'm basically setting up is a map. These are columns that I'm going to be creating, but these are the basic large chunks. You can call them mega epics in the progression of the player through the game. Once we do this, I'm going to start talking about what kinds of pieces fall under, what kind of epics will fall under those columns. For download and install, I know that I'm going to need to access my Steam account. As a developer, I'm going to want to have a build manager. I, of course, need some kind of repository where all the code is kept, all the assets are kept. So some things that you'll find in these columns will be developer-facing, and others will be player-facing. To create an account, I'm going to need to have a database ready for a player. The player himself will need to enter their name, their username. They could want to choose their avatar so they can be recognized by an image. And of course, as developers, we're going to want to be able to capture analytics. How often are people coming into the game? How long are they staying for? Those kinds of things. At this point, we go into the select the game. I'm going to want a game select screen. Probably going to want to be able to load up a game. So I've also need to, of course, have a save function at this point. And perhaps autosave is what we really want in the final version of the game. In the player lobby, I should be able to look to match myself against other players by their skill level, by the region of the country they're in. Perhaps we have some auto matchmaking logic. And maybe I want to search by name because I know my friend's username. Playing the game means either playing chess, checkers, Go, or backgammon. Once we exit the game, We know that we want to see our ranking. Maybe there's an award system that we want to have. We know the power of leaderboards, so we're going to want to include some leaderboard feature. Perhaps we want to, at the end of the game, I find that in many of the games that I play, I want to be able to send a taunt message at the end of a game. Haha, gotcha, that kind of thing. So we want some challenger messages system. And at this point, we're going to think about our in-app advertisements, because here's the place that we'll drop in our monetization functions. Once the game is off, we know that we're going to want to be able to send push notifications, also send updates when we want to send updates. So that's functionality would also be in this off mode. So now we have a whole series of epics. We want to be able to arrange all this work into some order that makes sense. Again, keeping in mind, we want to have a working version of the game as fast as possible to be able to gauge what should be the next piece. So here's where the magic comes in. We're going to talk about, in each of these columns, the pieces that absolutely have to happen to have a pass from the beginning to end and a skeleton of the game for putting into players' hands or putting into developers' hands to feel out where should we go next. In the first column, we know that we're going to need some kind of version controller repository because we're going to be working off of a single code base. We know that we're going to want to create a database and enter names, but we don't necessarily need to choose an avatar or even put in analytics here at the very beginning of building the game, the very beginning of the development cycle. Keeping going through, we know that we need a game select screen, but that could be a single one-button screen. And the save and load, for testing reasons, we're going to want to save our progress. Perhaps we don't want to worry at all about any of the things like matching up by skill level or region or name search. In this very early version of the game, we're going to auto match make against probably a computer player. We're not going to try to start out by building every single game. It just doesn't make sense. We do know that chess is the number one game for us because we know that the game pieces are going to be really powerful for us in chess. So let's only start to build chess. We're not going to try to build the other games just yet. And in this very, very early version of the game, we might go ahead and build chess that's an auto win or auto lose, just to see how it feels to start and stop the whole progression. We really only want to have a leaderboard, and again, that could be a screen that's either hooked up or not hooked up to the actual game logic. We also do know that we want to stub in our in-app advertisements because we know monetization will be important to us. And as far as the off mode, we may not need a single thing in the off mode in this first version of the game. Now that we know that our direct path has only these items here for a very quick early version of the game, we're going to talk about how to set up their level of effort. And for this, we're going to use t-shirt sizes. Again, we're still on the Durden meeting, so we've been at this for some time at this point. It's a very quick, easy way to gauge the amount of effort. We're going to say a small amount of effort means that this item could probably fit into a single sprint. We're defining our sprint as 3 weeks. A medium effort will take about a full sprint to finish the work. Again, this is an estimate. And then large efforts will likely take more than one sprint. So we're going to assign these out, and you'll see that things like setting up the repository, we know that only takes a little bit of time. Entering the name, that again will only take a little bit of time. A database might take us a whole sprint to make. And the game of chess itself, we know that that's a large effort, so let's put an L on that. So now we're going to take all those epics and put in our backlog. Everything that we've made an estimate on, those pieces that we know that we need to make first, we're going to put that in the bucket that's labeled the vertical slice, and then everything else after that will be next features. Now we're going to start laying out our schedule. We have our first milestone, it's in the contract, that we deliver our vertical slice in milestone 1, and that is after 6 sprints. So let's lay these things out to find out how easily we can hit that time. See if we have a realistic schedule on our hands. So with those vertical slice items, we're going to lay them out. We said that any of the large items we're going to take more than a single sprint, and chess really is a big piece of work. So we know we're going to start with that one, and it's going to go the entire way through the 6 sprints. We may finish earlier, but it feels like it's going to take a large amount of time because, again, we can make a really quick early version of chess, which is just launch the game and win. But as we go further, we're going to want to have more and more functionality in there, maybe choosing different character types or actually the logic for the game. Let's make the repository obviously in the very first sprint and set up the database. That's going to go 2 sprints, but we feel like we can do that, and it needs to happen at the very beginning. And then we're going to continue to lay things out. Save and load will happen next. Enter name will happen in the 3rd sprint. But what you're seeing is we've basically set up 3 different strike teams and are laying them out to make sure that we have these 3 strike teams never overloaded with too much work. And we have the 3rd strike team has availability in sprint 6 to pick up any extra work and to take up the work for any kind of delays we've had in development. Now, as we're progressing, in sprint 2, I've talked in the other video about our planning meetings, we're talking about building out the next sprints, making sure the next sprints are planned correctly. We could also look forward to, after sprint 6 is over, where are we going to start our next important piece? We've done a full sprint's worth of work, and now we're in sprint 2. And we're realizing, boy, we really could use a build manager. This will make development happen faster. So let's put that in our bucket for sprint 7. And if at all possible, maybe we'll even move it in earlier, should strike team 3 finish even sooner. And we'll continue to do it this way. We'll start planning out the next sprints. In sprint 3, we'll start planning out sprint 8, pulling in the pieces that we recognize are very important for development and for proving out the fun of the game. So here are the steps we'll take to plan out the entire schedule when we know that we've got these milestones in our contract. We have milestones 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then our gold release. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And if you count out the entire sprint, we're talking about a schedule that has 18 3-week sprints. So now we're going to start breaking our large schedule into its phases. We know that the pre-production phase is very important, and we know that vertical slice is what we're on the contract for milestone 1. Milestone 2 and 3 and 4 are all part of our production phase, and then the last 2 sprints we're calling our QA phase, and that leads up to going gold. There is a rule of thumb, a guideline that we like to use in the places I've worked in the past, that takes the time from the beginning of pre-production to the start of QA, so in this schedule it will be milestone 4, and we find the middle date. In this case, it's going to be at the end of milestone 8. That's our target date for having all the work done, which is really not always possible, but it is a good date to keep in mind. We found in the past when you're using the second half of that schedule from pre-production to the end of production, just for balancing the features you've built and for polish and adding in more art assets, if you can afford yourself that kind of schedule time, you're increasing your chances for success. Again, it's not always feasible, and I'm going to show you in this example, we didn't keep to it, but we did have that date in mind as we talked about laying out all the features. So we know that we feel that we're pretty comfortable with having all of the vertical slice features, all the vertical slice epics, handled inside of those first 6 sprints of production. But there's just no way we're going to get that entire feature list inside two more sprints. We just know this. Because it's impossible, we take the next step to start sussing out the t-shirt estimates for all the features we haven't put in the vertical slice. And again, this could happen during that pre-production phase. I would say if your meeting has gone on too long, this might be a step that you take up in the pre-production phase. But we're going to start laying it out again that same way we did before, where we have 3 strike teams and we don't want to overload any strike team. We don't want to overload the team with wanting to do too much work, knowing that mediums take a full sprint and smalls can usually fit inside of a sprint. The way that I'm laying out these epics, we're going to find out that we have a buffer of about 2 sprints, about 6 weeks before we start hardening. That's not ideal. I would love to be able to afford more, but laying these things out this way, I recognize immediately that Go and backgammon are probably not going to make the list. We're going to want to start checkers as soon as we finish up chess, which means somewhere around sprint 10 is when we figure we can start checkers. But Go and backgammon are probably off the list. And at this point, you can inform the people forming the contract that, yes, this is what we're going for, but now laying it out further to increase our chances for success, we're going to put these on the back burner, and they may go out in a further release. As we look at our milestone 2 contract, what we prefer to do, because this story mapping exercise is best done before the milestone goals are all defined, is we take a look at the features that we expect to finish sometime in sprint 7 and make those the milestone 2 goals. Same thing with milestone 3. We're going to look at those things we're going to accomplish by sprint 10, leaving us a 3-sprint buffer so that we can under-promise and over-deliver. If we are able to get some of the items from sprint 11 or sprint 12 into that delivery in milestone 3, great, but we're not promising it. We're only promising up to sprint 10. And everything after sprint 10, we include in the contract, but we list under the nice-to-haves, again, in priority order. So things like selecting our opponent by their rank or selecting our opponent by region, those things that we've listed into sprint 14, we'll list them there, but again, we'll put them as a low nice-to-have. And again, if you're building this game for a client, you're going to want to have them included in this meeting, or at least in your final version, to say, do you agree or disagree with these being the lowest nice-to-haves? And if they have something that they want to push forward, work with them in order to create your schedule that allows for your best chance for success for the things that are most important to them. So in summary, the exercise of a story map is to get you a quick working version from beginning to end of the entire experience. You want to involve your entire team in the schedule building process. Get your experts in from each of those different disciplines, and as much as possible, show your product owner or your client, this is the way we expect to build, and these are the things you expect to see, and these are the reasons why these items are listed as nice-to-haves or lower nice-to-haves. Use that midpoint in the production as a guide to let you help gauge the risk for success for all the items that you have in your backlog. And be realistic with your scope and buffer. The more complex the game, the more buffer you're going to need. We had a metric, and I'm going to really touch on it quickly here, for estimating our projects. We'd had a multiplier, and in that multiplier, we would ask questions like, have we worked with this client before? Is this a very challenging product that has no example to work off of? Have we used this technology before? Is it brand new technology? How good is the support for the new technology we're working on? Has the team worked with themselves before, or is this a brand new team who people don't know each other? Obviously, the more the team has worked together in the past on games, the faster they're able to work. There are lots of questions you want to ask, and that should affect how much buffer you build into your schedule. And then, obviously, allow yourself to react to new information. That means building your schedule with a buffer time and knowing that buffer time is there to say, you know what, we discovered that this is really cool. All of a sudden, the pieces that we built, they're not animated, so it's not a lot of fun. Maybe we need to throw some animation in there on some of those characters. Okay, well, now we know that's going to increase our scope. Let's put some of that stuff in, and then you might trade off building checkers at all so that you can put animation on your chess pieces. That's the kind of information you want to discover as early as possible. I hope this video has helped you out. If you have any questions about story mapping, please feel free to send me an email. Again, my name is Jeff Outlaw, and you can always reach me at outlawartisans@gmail.com. Cheers.